to hear from him. Further education on exploring Microsoft's cloud offering. Brett, I can see your screen. Take it away.
Morning, Kim. Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction, and it's kind of funny that you left that on there. I just sent that over as a little joke, but you know, hey, it's true enough. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Office 365, Azure, Intune, and all the pieces of the Microsoft Cloud. You know, I get asked very often what exactly is the cloud and what does it do for me, and you know, basically a lot of people tend to not have a full understanding of what it is and what all it can do for them, and where it can save them money. So that's going to be my focus today. It's kind of going over what is out there, what you can do with it, how you can save money with it, and I'm going to do that through a presentation on a company that is made up. That's called Fabricam Incorporated, and Microsoft uses this company as one of its kind of demo companies to help focus a presentation and how the technology can improve an organization. If I can get my slide started here, apologize. And of course, we start off with a technical issue. Let me try that again. There we go. All right, apologize for that. So we're exploring Microsoft's cloud offering today. So this is our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about what is cloud. Then we're going to look at a common challenge for average organization, and then what the responses to that challenge might be. And then we'll just do a short overview of Office 365, Azure, and Intune. Then we're going to wrap it up with a little bit of a Q&A session. So let's jump straight into our mythical corporation. So this is an organization that was founded in 1998 by two brothers who turned their furniture making hobby into a successful business. They experienced about a decade of steady growth driven by a housing market that was on fire. Well, that's maybe not a particularly good euphemism, but you know. So Fabricam decided to refresh all of their IT infrastructure in 2007 when cash flow was peaked and the market was super hot. And they had the capital to invest at that point. So in 2008, obviously everybody knows we had a bit of a housing market tumble. And obviously that not only affected the house market, the builders and everything else, but everybody that makes stuff to put in houses. So the furniture business kind of went into a bit of a slump at that point because the new furniture wasn't needed to fill the houses. So their orders just kind of stopped coming in. Obviously, this led to a decline in sales, profitability, and it did lead to a series of staff reductions and layoffs to keep the company afloat. So along about 2012, the market's rebounding, things are starting to happen, orders start coming in, and Fabricam cautiously starts hiring and ramping production back up, and slowly but surely their numbers start to move into the black again. Of course, Fabricam didn't have the cash reserves that it had in 2007. It essentially depleted those to keep the company afloat over the 5 years, but things were looking up. By 2015, revenue was up, production was flowing. Fabricam decided it was time to refresh their systems again. But now they had a decision to make. Do we dig into our modest reserves that we have started to rebuild and make a big cash outlay for new hardware, or do we take more of an operational expense approach and move infrastructure to the cloud? So what they essentially have, they have 150 plant workers, 50 computer users, and they've got roughly about 5 servers. So their user base is going to be 25 clerical office workers, bookkeepers, purchasers, and that sort. They're going to have 10 managers, president, VP, production manager, that sort of thing. And they've got 15 salespeople. 3 work from their headquarters in Minneapolis. The rest work on mobile or in their home offices across the country. So as far as servers go, let's say they've got an RDP server, a SQL server running GP 2010, an Exchange 2007 server, a couple domain controllers, one doubling as a file server. So that's kind of the setup here, kind of the organization that we're looking at in this scenario. So what kind of challenges does Fabricam have? Well, obviously the server's pretty old at this point. It's going to be approaching end of life. They've actually had some recent hardware failures that have caused some pretty significant downtime and had some impact on their business. And actually, one of the parts they had to source from eBay because they couldn't find a new part for the old server anymore. Server software, so everything they have is running on 2008. That's approaching end of life, which will mean all the updates, security patches, fixes, things are going to stop coming out for that, and they won't be able to get support for it if they have a problem. GP 2010, which they had just moved into before the market crashed, is already out of support, and there are no additional patches or fixes available. And the current version has a number of improvements that they would really be really find useful, and obviously there are no more tax updates available for payroll and other functions inside the software. So they really are staring at an upgrade for that. Exchange 2007 also extended support and is nearing end of life. Support and patches and security rates will be stopping for that product next year, actually. Another interesting challenge they have is recent churn and some retirements have freshened their workforce. New younger workers are looking for a bit more flexibility in their communication and collaboration tools. And these younger folks are people that have grown up in the cloud age, where you don't store documents on a drive somewhere. You store them in your Dropbox, or you don't necessarily send an email. You might send an IM, but they just work differently. They operate differently, and so the leadership at Fabricam is getting requests for things like a Dropbox, or being able to access company files from phones or tablets and things like that. So that's actually a pretty common challenge these days, and we've had a number of customers come to us and say, hey, we just had to hire some new people, and the first email I got from the new marketing manager is what's my login for Dropbox? And just learning how to enable younger workers to work, it seems to be a bit of a challenge in the last couple of years. The last one that they're looking at is business continuity concerns. So Fabricam last year had a power disruption for about 3 days, and for this organization, that pretty much completely stopped their entire operation. Not only were they obviously not able to produce furniture, they were not able to send and receive emails. They weren't able to send and receive phone calls. Everything was happening off of cell phones. Had a huge cellular bill for that month, and that 3 days of lost function was quite a costly experience for them. So now business continuity has become a big point for them. How do we deal with issues like that? How do we stay functional if we lose power, or if we lose internet, or if we have a fire, or some other disaster that destroys our facility? How do we keep functioning and keep running, keep the money flowing in while we recover from that? So that's a huge concern for them now. So here we are with Fabricam. They're trying to figure out what they need to do to upgrade their infrastructure and get back on the good track. But obviously, they don't want to break the bank on things. So they're looking at a couple different options. First option, let's replace the infrastructure. What does that look like? So let's say they want to replace all their servers just like they are, just current versions, get new hardware in there, new equipment, new software. Server hardware, they expect to spend about $35,000 for enterprise server hardware. Let me look at about $4,000 for operating systems, about $5,000 for a current version of Exchange. SQL 2014, their other software, and then the migration services or the IT services to get them moved into that new hardware. They're looking at a pretty big capital expenditure here of about $141,440. That's no drop in the bucket for anybody. The services for that new infrastructure. So if we look at things like power and cooling for 5 years, we look at maintenance support for 5 years, backup systems on and off site, and other miscellaneous costs. I mean, we're looking at another $185,910 estimated to operate that new infrastructure. And that's assuming, making a lot of assumptions for IT support, monitoring, maintenance management, upgrades, those kind of things. So that's going to be a significant investment in that over time. So what's that total look like? Well, replace the infrastructure. Total initial investment, $141,440. That's cash out of the pocket on day one. Cost of service over 5 years, $185,910. So the total cost of that infrastructure overhaul over the next 5 years is going to be $327,350. That's quite a bit of pocket change there. If we break that up into a monthly cost, that's going to be about $5,456 per month to purchase and operate that infrastructure over the next 5 years. Well, that would replace all of their hardware, all of their servers, replicate all their services on a new infrastructure, new platform, and so that would basically put them right where they are today, but with newer versions of software. So that doesn't really progress them too much towards the cloud and modern infrastructure and organization, but it does get them to a place where they can move forward to some extent. Obviously, this doesn't really help their business continuity concerns too much. It doesn't really mobilize their workforce too much. It doesn't really take the younger workforce into account, and they're still kind of dead in the water if they have a power failure or something happens to the facility. So so they still have those challenges to deal with, even with this huge $300,000 investment in new infrastructure. So what might be a better solution for them that will cost less and provide some of those extra features and things that they need to overcome some of their challenges? Well, let's take a look at cloud. So moving to the cloud is going to be a lot cheaper than deploying new hardware. So migrating their email systems to the cloud, that's going to be roughly $7,500 estimated to move that in. Now that's going to be what's called an Exchange migration. It's a minimally impactful operation. Users just basically will get a message at some point that their Outlook has been changed by the administrator, closed and reopened, and they're hooked to their new Office 365 mailbox. All the data would be moved over. All the infrastructure would be decommissioned, and they would be functioning out of the Office 365 cloud at that point. So that would be one server down, and then one of the roles moved from one of the servers, the file services. So moving into 365, they would begin using OneDrive and SharePoint for file storage and collaboration. They would be using Office 365 for their email and services related to that. moving the server infrastructure into Azure. So what you do there is you generally will establish a connection between your network and Azure. And that's usually done through a VPN connection that you establish between your router and the virtual router in your space in Microsoft Azure. Once you have that done, then you can extend your network into the Azure cloud. And that's where people start to tend to get a little confused as to what that means. That essentially creates a connection between your little sandbox inside of the Azure infrastructure and your network. And the access you have between your desktop computer that you're sitting at in your office, the connection with the server sitting on the other side of the building, and the server in Azure is exactly the same. So it's obviously it's going to be a little bit slower because you are going out across the internet, but connectivity, access control, those mechanics are all exactly the same. So it operates just like that server was sitting in the closet down the hall from you. When you establish your Azure network and you extend into it, at that point it basically becomes a new server room for you. So you can move servers into that infrastructure. You can move services into that infrastructure, and then you can set up an additional domain controller there, and that gives you site redundancy. You can move your SQL server into that. You can move your GP into that, your RDP server. Basically any server that you want to move into Azure, you can probably move it in there. Obviously, there are some limitations. If you have a server that requires hardware for some reason, for example, some people have, or some companies have time clock systems that may have a direct connection of some kind to a server, or there may be other hardware player limitations that might restrict you from moving a server into Azure, but those aren't particularly common and can generally be dealt with. So in this scenario, Fabricam moving moving one of the DCs into Azure and then deploying a SQL server and then an RDP server to run GP out of, that is going to cost about $9,000 to get all that moved over. Now that doesn't include obviously a GP upgrade, but that includes putting the infrastructure in place for it. So total investment to get into the cloud, $16,500. So obviously that's significantly less than the $141,440 to buy all new hardware. So we're definitely looking at a lower barrier of entry to move into cloud than it would be to buy new hardware. So that's our upfront cost. Well, obviously, if we're using the cloud, we're going to be paying a monthly bill and not an upfront bill. So let's take a look at that and see what that looks like. So once we're in the cloud, we're going to be experiencing monthly subscription costs instead of that big cash outlay. So if we look at that, we have 50 users with Office 365 Small Business Standard. That's going to cost about $410 a month. And on our Azure, now rough estimation, obviously, it depends on how much data you have, how much things you're moving around, what servers you need. But to put a new domain controller, a SQL server, an RDP server, and a GP implementation, infrastructure implementation to support 10 users of GP, you would be looking at a total monthly hosting cost for that environment of about $1,984, or just a little under $2,000. And that's for resources. Now, the great thing about Azure, obviously, is you pay for what you use. So if you use less, then you pay for less. So it may not necessarily be exactly $1,984 for that scenario. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But that flexibility and scalability is what makes or what brings so much value to that platform. On the Azure server support costs, I just put an estimate of $125 per server, which is what we charge for managing an Azure server. That cost may vary between different organizations. But at the end of the day, we're going to look at an average cost per month to operate our infrastructure is now at $2,769. So that's a little under $3,000 to operate our entire infrastructure for a month. So let's look at the comparison on that. Our server infrastructure upgrade, the cost to buy that, the cost to run that, averaged out over 5 years, the cost per month is going to be $5,456. The cloud path for that, the average cost per month for the hosting is going to be $26.79. So our savings per month for cloud is going to be $2,687. That is a significant savings over refreshing the hardware on a monthly cost. And then the operational cost for the cloud over 5 years is going to be 100, or it's the cost savings over 5 years is going to be $161,220. So you're literally looking at, over 5 years, half the price of replacing infrastructure by moving into the cloud. And as we talked about a minute ago, the replacing the infrastructure scenario, that puts you back in the same place that you are now, just with current software. It doesn't solve any of the problems. It doesn't give you better business continuity. It doesn't give you more modern network services for younger workforce. It doesn't make you resilient to service interruption at your location or anything else. That just gets you up to current with what you have. So with the Office 365 Azure deployment to move into the Microsoft Cloud, not only do you get everything you had before as far as services, but now you've got business continuity because the storage for Azure is across 2 data centers. You've got mobile access to your systems. So if everything is in Office 365, whether you're at the office or not, you're connected. You've got access to your email. You've got access to Skype for Business. You've got access to your OneDrive or your SharePoint. It doesn't matter where you are. You can access those. So your sales team that's out on the road, your younger workers that may be working from the park or from their home or wherever else they may be, they've got access to that information. They've got access to those services, completely independent of what whether your building is standing or whether it's not, whether your power's on, whether your internet's on. It doesn't really matter. All that stuff is available. So in the instance where your power line got cut and the phone company told you, or the power company told you it would be 2 days before it got fixed, you can have your people go home and work from home, or you can have an alternate location. You've got that flexibility. You've got that scalability and that infrastructure that can help you keep running in the event that you have significant problems. So not only for half the price, not only are you getting the same service, you're getting a whole lot more services. So it's definitely a very clear and obvious savings to the cloud over the classic infrastructure model. Okay, so that's a look at the numbers on that. Let's take a look a little bit more at the features and functionality that we have now that we didn't have before with our new solution in the cloud. So let's take a little look at Office 365. So we've taken our old Exchange server, we've moved all that into Office 365. what kind of new features do we have available to us? What do we get out of that move? So now we're on the current version of Exchange, Exchange 2016. So that has a slew of new features and better security. We have, obviously, that is running in the Microsoft Cloud, so we're not dependent on hardware, power, or infrastructure at our on-premise location. So we have a higher availability of that service than we had before. And then we have new collaboration features. We have better security. We have web access to that system. We have now have access to features and functionality from our iPad, our tablets, our phones, things like that. And it's all incorporated into our Active Directory with AD synchronization. So we've got a single username and password with single sign-on across that infrastructure. And we can access that data from anywhere, any way we want to. Not only do we have the email functionality that we had before, now we have Skype for Business as a feature. So that's part of the package. And so Skype for Business is an enterprise-grade IM instant messenger communication meeting tool that runs a number of different functions for us. It allows us instant real-time communication with fellow employees. It acts as kind of an address book and an organizational mechanism for us, so we can see all the people in our work groups or anybody that we're maintaining in our favorite list, and we can see if they're online, if they're available, what they're up to, if they're off-site, if they're at a client, if they're busy, not available. All that functionality is there. What that's called presence. So we can see that. We can start an instant message conversation with anybody in our organization or anybody outside. So if somebody outside of your organization uses Skype for Business, you can communicate directly with them as well. That's through the federation system. So we can also make point-to-point calls. So if I wanted to call Kim right now, I could certainly do that. Just pull out my Skype and search for Kim and right-click and call her. I can also get into a meeting with Skype where I can share a program or share a desktop, much like GoToMeeting here. I can present a PowerPoint presentation or a Word document, or even just share my screen if I'm working on something in Excel and I want to collaborate with somebody else. Make sure I'm using the right numbers for things. I can do that. I can also use Skype for Business as a phone. It is a fully functional soft phone client that hooks into the Skype for Business enterprise voice infrastructure. So I can use it as that as well. And also we can use that as a meeting and collaboration tool. So whenever I schedule a meeting with anybody inside my organization, I always set it up as a Skype meeting. And then when they get the invitation, they can just right-click on that calendar entry in their calendar and hit join, and they'll join the Skype meeting. And then once we're inside, we can add people, we can share whiteboard, we can do presentation on desktop, communicate, webcam, all that different functionality that the current generation of workforce is used to, that have been using over the last decade as they've been growing up, going through high school, things like that. That's all very familiar to them. They're used to that functionality, and honestly, they tend to demand that kind of functionality to make them productive in the workforce today. So there's a lot of great features and functionality for Skype for Business that is definitely above and beyond what you get with a classic Exchange server scenario where you're just getting email and calendar sharing. So as I'd mentioned, the additional options available like enterprise voice. So I didn't include the voice service in my price estimations, just because it's really hard to figure out what that is in the short time that I had to figure that in. But Microsoft released their new E5 SKU in December, which includes enterprise voice service for Skype for Business. And what that allows you to do is actually use Skype as your phone. And it is like I said, a soft phone client, so you can make and receive calls through your PC. And you do that with either a headset, or I'm actually using a Jabra 510 speakerphone right now. Very amazingly high quality for phone calls, presentations, and things like we're doing right now. You can actually have a desk phone that has a link client embedded in the phone. Or I can use my cell phone as well. So I have the Link client on both my Windows phone and my iPhone, and also on my iPad and my Mac. I keep one of everything around because I'm a nerd and I like technology stuff, but also so I can present functionality and do different things on different platforms. Because Microsoft has gotten very agnostic in the last couple of years with some leadership changes. So their Office platform and their solutions spread across all the options these days. So they're not 100% Windows PCs and Windows Phone. They don't really care anymore. You know, they came to the conclusion that, hey, we're a software company. We make software. You know, Office is what we make. We want everybody to be able to use Office. So it's a very agnostic platform now. So I can access the same stuff from my little Mac or my PC or my Windows Phone or iPhone or iPad or whatever I've got. It all works the same. So that enterprise voice functionality allows for inbound, outbound calling, either through the desk phone or the soft phone client for PC, Mac, or phone. And it allows for point-to-point calling, and it allows for conferencing as well. So when I send a meeting invite out to an external recipient, they get the same link, and they can join the call through the Link web or the Skype for Business web client. Or it also includes a phone number and a PIN that they can use that works very much like the classic conference call functionality. So they receive that, and they can call in or click into the link meeting and join the session and the conference call. And of course, once we get in there, we can do all the cool sharing features and things like that. It allows for auto attendant functionality. It allows you to set up hunt groups, and all the classic phone PBX functionality that you expect in a modern phone system is available. And of course, that is also completely independent of your infrastructure. So if the building burns down, your phones keep ringing. You've got your sales guys with the Link client on their cell phones. You've got the management with it on theirs. You've got users that can log into the Link web client. You can still function. You can still communicate even during a critical disaster. The additional features you get, now you have OneDrive for Business and SharePoint for collaboration and file management. So that also, both of those are parts of the Microsoft Office 365 infrastructure. So if you're not familiar with OneDrive, that is Microsoft's version of Dropbox or Box or any of those other flavors of file storage systems. But it is built for the enterprise. There's two versions. There's the Dropbox or the OneDrive, which is the kind of the personal version, which ties into your individual 365 account. And there's also OneDrive for Business that uses SharePoint as a backend for file storage. Both of those are synchronous file systems. So you have a OneDrive folder, on your desktop, your iPad, your phone, whatever you're using. And then your files are synchronized into that folder across all those platforms. So if you are working on a presentation on your desktop, and you grab your laptop and go to Starbucks, you open it up, you connect to the internet, and that presentation is now in your OneDrive folder. You can open it up there and work on it from there. The same thing with your phone. If you've got a Word doc or an Excel doc or whatever you may be working on, that's available across all those platforms, and it's all synchronized and completely readily available. And SharePoint is a great file storage solution, but also has a number of other features that make it very valuable. There's all kinds of lists functionality, web parts, reporting functionality, and different plugins and add-ins that provide you with a myriad of services and features for your users and for your administration to help improve workflows and add functionality and take things out of paper and put them into digital. Just a number of features and functionality there. Again, we talked about the always-on mentality with 365. It's a very highly complex scaled infrastructure across thousands and thousands of servers. So if you have a hardware failure in the Azure subsystem, it actually has absolutely no impact on operations. So it's very well thought out and considered and very well implemented across a highly available multi-data center infrastructure. So you rarely ever have to worry about it being down. And if it is down, it's down for less than an hour. So it's very highly available infrastructure for email, IM, and voice. We did talk a little bit about mobile access to services that is also independent of your infrastructure on your on-prem organization. How to access those while you're on the road, or newer workers that maybe want to work from their iPad in Starbucks instead of their PC in the office. So that was a little bit of overview of 365 services and features. So let's talk a little bit about Azure. So Microsoft Azure, as we started out with, is the Microsoft Cloud Infrastructure System. And on top of that runs many functionalities and features of the Microsoft ecosphere, Office 365, Azure AD, other services running on top of that infrastructure. So let's talk a little bit about that and try to explore it a little bit here. So Microsoft Azure, so when you move a server into that environment, first off, you're getting a very fresh, clean, high-performance infrastructure available to you when you extend your infrastructure into Azure. So what that means is there are thousands and thousands and thousands of servers across 54 data centers that now become available as infrastructure for you. Obviously, you're not using it at first, so you're not going to pay for it. The Azure is very much pay-as-you-go. But that's all available to you. So now, if you need to scale quickly, you can. You can add servers, spin them up, spin them down. You can add storage. You can do all those kind of things that you want to pretty quickly, pretty efficiently, and pretty easily. So it's very easy to add high-performance infrastructure to your organization whenever you need to. Moving into Azure, now you've got current versions of operating systems. As you build out your Azure servers, they build on the current version of Windows Server. So when you build it on day one, you're current and ready to hit the ground running. In this scenario with Fabricam, they would now be on all current versions of operating system and software. As I said, it's a highly scalable, highly flexible infrastructure. There are a number of features built into the system that allow for an amazing amount of scalability, increasing, decreasing workloads, adding resources, detracting resources. Whatever you need to do to tailor it to fit your needs, that capability is there. On the high availability, there are a number of features that are part of Azure that allow it to be super highly available, and those are focused a lot on the storage. So there's 3 different tiers of storage in Azure. One of them is geo-redundant. What that means is it will store the data that you're putting in 2 different geolocated data centers, and that data is synchronized simultaneously between the 2. So if you're geolocated between the East and West Coast data centers for the U.S., for example, if there were some event in the East Coast that took that data center down, you would continue to operate out of your system in the West Coast. So there would be very minimal disruption to your operations, and you would just carry on as you normally do. When the East Coast data center came back up, you might get moved back over, you might get left in the West. It's very independent of that infrastructure. Now, obviously, if your company was working out of Los Angeles and you were in the West Coast data center, you would probably want to come back to the West Coast when it was back online. So you can set your preferred data center when you have the geo redundant storage system. You're now independent of your local infrastructure, and we've talked about that. You're completely independent of that. You can use the infrastructure wherever you are. You don't have to be at the office. You can be at home. You can be in Jamaica. You can be in Switzerland, wherever you want to be, and access your services. You can do that. And then Azure is pay-as-you-go. You can scale up and scale down as you need to. If you buy into a new system and you need to deploy a server, you can deploy a server into Azure in a couple hours and have a fully updated, ready-to-go server to deploy your new solution on. Or if you need to scale quickly, you can do that as well. One perfect example is we have one customer that has their web system in Azure, and every quarter they have a membership drive, and it is an organization that runs off a membership mechanism, and they provide services to their members. And every quarter they have some type of membership drive where they expect to have 10 times greater or more traffic onto their website than they normally do. So when they're going to run one of those, they schedule a ramp up on their Azure. So they ramp up a couple steps for about a week to take that additional load. And once that load comes back down, then we ramp it back down. And then they are literally just paying for exactly what they use. So most of the time they're running at a certain level, and when they need to, they bump that up for a short period of time. Obviously, that time that they're at that additional level, they pay for. And then once the need goes back down, they ramp back down, and they run at that normal level for the rest of that period. So very, very scalable, and you're paying for what you use. So definitely an amazing platform out there for you. The last thing I want to talk about, and I'm starting to come up on my time, let's talk about Windows Intune for just a few minutes. That also is part of the Microsoft ecosphere. And what Intune is a management suite for your Microsoft infrastructure. So that allows you to manage your computers, your endpoints, your servers. It allows you to maintain them, keep them up to date, install patches, updates, fixes, things like that. And that's all pushed from a console. And you can just push out updates to all your computers on Wednesday night if you want to do that. And it helps make sure that computers are updated and secured. There's a very nice, clean dashboard you can go to and see if you have computers that are missing updates or that have security vulnerabilities that need to be addressed, and allows you to address those. It also helps you keep your critical data secure. There are functions and features in the Azure infrastructure and Intune to help you control your data. And if you have IP inside your organization that you need to protect, it definitely gives you the tools to ensure that is protected and maintained. And it allows you to enable mobile device management inside your organization. So this is it's kind of a hot topic in enterprise right now. If we allow users to use their own phone to access features and functionality like email, how do we manage that? How do we secure it? How do we control it? How do we make sure that our data that's private is staying private? And all of that functionality is made available through the Enterprise Mobility Suite that's part of Intune and Azure. So there's a lot of nice features in Intune that I would have liked to have had a couple more minutes to go into, but we are approaching our time limit. So let's move into a quick review of what we talked about today. So we've talked about the features and functionality of Office 365, how it enables you to work on the go, and how it enables you to please a younger workforce that is expecting different features and functionality that you may not have in your classic on-prem infrastructure. We talked a little bit about increasing uptime and reducing your site dependence with Microsoft Azure. You know, the functionality, the scalability, the usability, all that, all those features in Azure just are you know, almost mind-blowing that you can have that kind of feature and those enterprise sets of functionality and be a small business that doesn't necessarily have a giant IT staff and a bunch of servers and things. You can have that level of function without that huge investment for them. And then we talked a little bit towards the end about keeping computers and devices up to date, secure and running smoothly with Microsoft Intune and the underlying Azure components for that. So that's essentially everything that I wanted to talk to everybody today about. I guess let's move into a bit of Q&A session with our remaining 7 minutes with the group here and talk a little bit about cloud and answer any questions you guys might have.
Excellent. All right. Love to hear those numbers. That was quite interesting. I've been a part of cloud education, but it's really neat to hear some of these cases. So again, everybody, if you've got questions that you'd like to ask Fred, go ahead and type those into the question area, and we will get you some answers. One thing that, and I guess just want to reiterate too, is a lot of folks have their GP on-prem, and they're interested in cost savings, backup, things like that with some things in the cloud, and it's done every day. Do you have any interesting cases where customers have been able to leverage having a dual employment?
If you move your, or if you're going to plan to move your GP into Azure, one of the great pieces of functionality that allows for you is you can now just upgrade from your on-prem deployment of GP. You can literally upgrade into Azure, and that means you don't have to have the investment of an additional server to step your upgrade. You can fire up a dev server in your Azure environment, run your upgrade through that into your permanent server, and you can just spin that server right down. Minimal cost, definitely a lot less than having to have an additional server in your on-premise infrastructure to do that upgrade. Then once you get into that, then you're replicating your GP server in Azure. If you're doing geolocation on that, you've got the multiple copies of the data. And also when we are doing management of servers in Azure, we're backing those up, we're replicating those images into our backup store as well. So we've got frequent backup copies that are available when necessary.
Okay. All right. Again, there are no questions in the queue. I guess while I have you here, Fred, your group works with a number of products in our managed services offerings. Can you, off the top of your head, just kind of run down what some of those services and products are so folks are aware of what else Interdyne VMI can bring to the table?
Sure. So we have a very detailed managed services offering that we provide to customers inside and outside of Azure. So we can do server monitoring, maintenance, and administration of servers in Azure. And we can also do the same thing for your systems that are on-premise as well. So we do monitoring of performance, uptime. We watch the servers. We make sure there's no errors, there's no problems. We're looking for things like drive errors and disk logs. We're looking for preventative things that we may see a minor warning start to pop up that we know is an indicator of a bigger problem, and we attack that and jump on it proactively before it becomes a operations impacting issue. We do routine maintenance on equipment, so we have automated systems that maintain desktops and laptops, like on Wednesday nights. We deploy antivirus and security systems that we use to ensure the highest level of security for endpoints that we manage. And then we also do monthly server maintenance where we physically or manually go in and install updates, patches, do disk maintenance and things like that on servers. And then we have help desk services that we provide as well. So if you have a problem with your Microsoft Word, or you're trying to having trouble printing, or can't get your Outlook to connect to your email, things like that, we have services to help handle those requests and provide assistance when needed. So we really can either go from the very basics of letting you know if we see a problem all the way up to full management administration of your network and infrastructure, and where we actually become your IT department.
So true, so true, and really important. And I've seen it with many different users out there. Having an IT person. Do I add an IT person, or do I move into the cloud and save myself time, and also getting done with all the backups, all that kind of stuff on weekends and everything is all being managed. So it's a great story. Well, thank you, Fred, very much for this education. And again, do get in touch